Good day, everybody, and welcome to our 6th lecture on managing corporate communications. So today we are going to look at some marketing elements or marketing promotions, mix elements that you have already looked at or will look at it in your marketing course. So briefly, when we engage in communication, we need to be aware of two very important things, that is the corporate image as well as the corporate identity. But what are these things and why are they important? The corporate image is defined as the manner in which a company presents itself to the public, while the corporate identity is the manner in which the public identifies the company based on its logo, its name, its colors, its products, its services, and so on. So these are two very important components of communication, especially within the integrated marketing communications mix. So what is the integrated marketing communication mix that I keep going on about? Well, it's how the organization integrates and coordinates its promotion mix elements. I'm sure you would by now know from your marketing module, perhaps in your undergrad or even now in your postgraduate level, that there are 6 or 7 marketing mix there are 6 promotion mix elements, including advertising, public relations, personal selling, promotions, corporate social responsibility, and so on. Okay, so those are all elements of the promotion mix. So why is it important for these to be carefully integrated? Because it leads to effective and efficient communications. That is why it is also important for communication majors or for the communication department to be aware and to integrate these promotion mix elements into their own communication strategies. So for this module, we are going to focus on these 4. We are going to focus on advertising, sponsorship, endorsements, and public relations. Now, we won't take a lot of time with these marketing communication mix elements because you have done them in detail in your marketing module, or you will complete them in detail in your marketing module. So just a brief definition of advertising. Advertising is any paid form of non-personal presentation and promotion of ideas, goods, or services by an identified sponsor. So that's the difference between advertising and communication. Advertising is a paid form of non-personal presentations. There is no personal relationship or there is no personality within it. However, in communication, there is no paying for the company to be presented in media. Right, so we can advertise 2 different things in sport. We can advertise sport goods or we can advertise sport services, and I've given you examples there in those pictures. A service would constitute things like gym service, for example, that we have Virgin Active, and goods could constitute sport products or sport brands or sport wear. Okay, so let's quickly look at how we build an advertising strategy. What's happening here? Right. So building an advertising strategy will always start with identifying advertising objectives. And these advertising objectives will always come from the company's goals and objectives. Remember, we spoke about the mission and the vision. That is where it comes from. Okay, so we start right there, and then we design or define our advertising objectives from there. We set the budget, we identify the source of media that we want to use, what message we want to put across, and then we encode it with those creative decisions there. And then at the end of the day, we need to evaluate the advert that we put out. Right, so there is a more detailed description of what we just went through. Okay, You can look at that a little bit later. But now I want us to look at some of the alternative forms of advertising. Maybe let's look at those media decisions there. All right, so when you make a decision on advertising, you need to identify, when you decide on the media that you want to use, actually, you need to decide who you want to reach, how frequently you want to reach these people. What impact is it going to have? Are they going to, or do you want them to know about the product? Do you want them to act? As in, do you want them to buy the product or the service and so on? So what's the major media type? What media do these people have access to? What specific media vehicles do they have access to? And the timing for your media as well is very, very important. Now, I'm sure you've gone through all this in your marketing module. I just want us to look at some few interesting alternative forms of media that have become prevalent. Okay, so look at these here at the bottom. Look at Pizza Hut. That's a very innovative way of advertising that they have done there. Look at that store advert there. That's in a toilet, a men's bathroom. So that's very, very innovative and quite alternative in the advertising industry. I wonder if you can think of other examples besides those. Off the top of my head, I can think of helicopter advertising. Okay, I don't know if you've seen them, but sometimes there's some helicopters that fly around with banners at the bottom. So that's quite interesting alternative forms of media that can be used to reach perhaps unexpected target markets. Look at this in a gymnasium. They are advertising Kellogg's Bran Flakes. That's very interesting, and they put it at the back of a gym machine, so you can clearly see the differences there. There's a before and after you start eating those Kellogg's. That's different, that's alternative. I think this is in Australia. I'm not very sure where this advert is, but it's very alternative. Look at that tennis ball sitting on top of the car. Okay, that's part of the advert. It's eye-grabbing. You will remember it for a long time if you saw it in person. All right, so let's look at some functions of advertising. All right, so we need to think about small versus large companies. The way small companies would advertise would be very different from the way large companies advertise. For example, if you look at the way that KFC would advertise, it would be very different from the way that perhaps Chicken Slice would advertise. It is a very two different companies in terms of size, but they have similar products. So what would be, in your opinion, differences between the way small companies approach advertising, or how advertising functions for their company in comparison to the way advertising functions for large companies? I want you to think around that and maybe come up with some ideas that we might be able to talk about in the group. Okay. And then let's think about the nature of advertising agencies. Why are they there? Okay, and what is the advantage of using an advertising agency? First of all, you have experts there. All they do is advertising. So they can focus exclusively on bringing your product to the advertising platform and reaching out to your audience. Okay, perhaps it could be a department in your company, but how do you pay those people? Is it easier? Is it cheaper to pay an advertising agency, or is it cheaper to have an advertising department within your company? Okay, so those are some decisions that small companies have to think about, as well as large companies. Perhaps large companies might be more inclined to go with advertising agencies, and small companies might be more inclined to have advertising departments within their company. That is entirely up to the budget, perhaps, or the objectives of those companies. All right, so let's quickly move on to endorsements. So endorsements, as we all know, are when a celebrity endorses a product. Maybe I'm using the word endorsement again in that definition. Perhaps we could say it's when a celebrity or a person with an impact, influencer, supports or shows support for a product. Okay, so there can be a number of different types of endorsements. Can be a clear endorsement where the celebrity will say, I endorse this product. It may be a testimonial where the celebrity says, well, I use this product and I would advise you to use it, or I would encourage you to use it. So those are the types of endorsements that we have or can see around. So who are the endorsers? So it's mostly celebrities or people that we can recognize that we mostly would see as endorsers. It could be movie stars, politicians, athletes. And you know, nowadays we are more inclined to see a lot more influencers becoming endorsers rather than mainstream celebrities. It's very interesting. And also in testimonials, we're likely to see ordinary people who talk about their experiences with the product. Sometimes it's not even a celebrity, it's just an everyday person who talks about their experience with using a certain product, and it has to be convincing. And then quickly moving on to sponsorships. Sponsorship is the financial support for a sport, whether it is an event, organization, or performer by an outside body, be it a person or an organization, for the mutual benefit of both parties. And sponsorship occurs at all levels of sport. Now, what's special about sponsorship is that it is for the mutual benefit of both parties. That means not only the sport entity who's receiving the financial support will benefit, but the sponsor also expects an outcome from their investment. So that is how sponsorship becomes special. So what are the different types of sponsorship? We have financial sponsors, we have in-kind sponsors, we have media sponsors, and we also have partnerships. Now, what I've done there is try and find some of the sponsors for Russia 2018 FIFA World Cup. And what I want you to do is to go and identify the sponsors of the FIFA World Cup for 2022 and their different levels. Okay, so identify who's the financial sponsor, who's the in-kind sponsor, who's the media sponsor, and who are the partners for the FIFA World Cup 2022. I think that would make for a very interesting discussion. Now, public relations is the part of the promotions mix that's very, very close to our communications module. Why? Because it is activities and communication. It is an activities and communication tool that is designed to build and maintain relationships with stakeholders, customers, and the broader community. So basically, the whole idea of public relations is built around communication. So what are the typical tools of public relations? Publicity. Remember, we spoke about writing for newspapers and so on. So publicity there, being news releases and press conferences, special events, open days, festivals, presentations that we spoke about a little bit earlier in a different lecture. Producing written materials, we spoke about writing skills being quite important, as well as lobbying. Okay, now lobbying is a social action. Right, so now that we've identified all those types of promotion mix tools, where does corporate social responsibility or corporate social investment fit in? Okay, by corporate social investment or corporate social responsibility, I'm referring to donations, bursaries, volunteering, fundraising, and so on. Where does it fit in? Is it part of public relations? Is it a marketing promotions tool on its own? Or is it something else entirely? What do you think? And where do you think it fits in? I'd love to see this as a discussion in the group. Perhaps I might start a conversation about it a little bit later tonight to see what ideas you might have. All right, so we have a model there for effective public relations. Remember, I did say I like it or I enjoy it when people can visualize what we have been talking about. So we always start with a strategic plan. Okay. Similarly, for public relations, we have a strategic plan right at the beginning. Then you identify your key messages, draft the message, have the experts analyze and so on. So it's just a brief description of what we have already covered. Okay, now this is something new, data analytics. What is data analytics? It's very important in marketing. I'm sure you would have covered it. Perhaps you might have looked at big data. It comes from here. So analytics is a systematic computational analysis of data or statistics. It is used for discovery, interpretation, and communication of meaningful patterns in data. And what and when do we use data analytics? Okay, we mostly use it in marketing practices. So we will identify some patterns on how our customers are purchasing our service, perhaps, or our product, how often they visit our store, which brand they mostly gravitate towards, and so on, and try to model our communications to that, to match that customer. Okay, so similarly in sport, we will then use data analytics to collect information about who our customers are, who our consumers are, how often they visit our websites, how often do they consume sport products, or how often do they consume sport content, from where do they source this content or equipment or goods, and then use that data to then communicate with our targeted market. All right, so there is a breakdown there. We use data analytics in integrated marketing communications for customer engagement. It helps us to identify potential customers. Like I've already said, we collect all that information, and we can also develop and make our IMC strategies a little bit better. It helps us to be able to retain our customers and to make them more loyal. I don't know if you are aware of some loyalty cards that some stores have. The more you swipe that card, the more they see what it is that you buy, or what it is that you gravitate towards in their shop, and they can target you as a customer and communicate with you a little bit better that way, and keep you happy by meeting your needs in the best way possible. It also helps to identify the best channels to reach your customers. You'll see that sometimes when you go to some shops, you do not get a receipt anymore. They can email it to you. You have that option. And sometimes they can even send it to you as an SMS. That I think is very good use of IMC. And there we are, done for the day. Let's meet again in our next lecture, and let's hope you have a good evening.